Right, morning everyone. One of the biggest questions I get asked is what ammo I use. So I thought I'd do a video on ammunition. It's a massively broad subject. There's no right or wrong. I think some things are better suited than others. But again, this is just my personal view, the way I see it. Other people have different views, which is fine. But if you're interested, this is my view. And hopefully I can give you a better insight into why I choose what I choose. Right, I bought a selection of ammo with me. I've got 8mm steel, 9.5mm steel, 9mm lead, 10mm lead, 11mm steel, 11mm lead, 12mm steel, or 12.5mm steel, one of the two, and 12mm lead. Obviously there's sizes either side of that, but I think these are the main ones people are going to be thinking of using when they're hunting. So we'll start with the 8mm steel. Personally for me, this has no place in true hunting. Yeah, it's an effective round at the right distance. There's always going to be stories, or not say stories, people that have shot things at great distances with this kind of ammunition, but I can assure you that is the exception rather than the rule. You know, you're not going to have people going out taking 30, 40 yard neck shots on pheasants with 8mm steel. So if you're shooting things at 10, 20 meters maybe, 8mm steel could be a choice for you, but I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, the smaller you go, the smaller your killing area is. If you were to sink this into a body of a rabbit at 20 meters, the chances are you're not going to bring it down, and which is obviously the last thing we want to do. Just one other thing I'll mention as well before we go on is all the examples here are done on a short draw shooting style. Things do change slightly when you get to styles like butterfly, where obviously you're generating much greater speeds, but I shoot a short draw which is anchored to my face here, so that's what I'm going to be covering. Like I say, things do change when they get to things like butterfly, because you can generate such greater speed. This probably would become more effective over a greater distance, but for our application this isn't for me. Right, I'm going to move on to 9.5 steel. When I came over to flat band last year, this was the most preferred ammo of everybody, and probably still is. Personally, again, I think it's too small. I've taken game at good ranges with this. I've taken a rabbit out at 40 yards, but I've also shot a pheasant in the neck at 25 with the right bands and have it stand there. It's a good ammunition for fairly close range. You've got to be head and neck shooting at close range. I mean, there's always a certain sort of limit to what speed you can put on these due to band slap, and for me with a short draw, what I found is the limit of that speed is around 250, which is a good speed, but because it's light, it burns off its speed very quickly. So as a long range ammunition, it's not that effective. You know, again, you've got to be putting it in the head. I've shot birds in the neck, like I say, and they basically laughed at me, but pretty much. So for me, 9.5 is out the question too. Right, 9mm lead. I was using this for quite a while and I had some very good success with it. When I started switching over to shooting larger game, like pheasants and ducks, what I found was that it's a bit small to do enough damage as it passes through. So I've actually shot ducks in the head with this. It's passed clean through and they've still managed to swim on. Obviously I followed up with another shot and still got the animal, but it's a good ball, it's got a good weight, but it's not large enough in my opinion to do enough damage for it to be an effective all-round ammunition. Got the dog whining here. Oi, it's enough. So yeah, it's good for small game, squirrels, rabbits at closer range, but again, the smaller the ammunition you use, the more accurate you have to be. Accuracy is always key, you know, make no mistake, but the smaller your ammo is, the smaller your killing area is. And when we're looking at hunting and taking an animal, I want the largest killing area possible with the most effective ammunition. So again, 9mm lead is out for me. Right, 10mm lead, one of my favourites. It's heavy enough to maintain its velocity downrange. It's large enough to do a good amount of damage. It's small enough to penetrate. I've shot lots of stuff with 10mm lead, and it's very close between this and 11mm steel for me. We'll cover more on the steel in a minute, but I do like to switch between the 10mm lead and the 11mm steel for a couple of reasons. 10mm lead is very good because it's smaller. Dog thought there was someone coming. Because it's smaller, obviously it can penetrate, so things like rabbits at range, it carries enough weight. If you drop a shot into its body, it's going to penetrate. It's big enough to do enough damage as it goes through. It's got the stopping power, as in like shock when it hits it, so the rabbit basically isn't going to get up and run off. You know, it's got that stopping power there. 10mm lead for ranges from 10 foot to 50 yards is a very good choice. It carries that weight with the stopping power. It's a real good all-rounder. Right, so we've got 10mm steel. This is another good choice of ammo. Again, it wouldn't be my preference. I like target shooting with these. When I target shoot, I still like to have a good amount of power there. So the 10mm steel, it's a bit of an in-betweener really. This for me comes in the same kind of category as 9.5. It doesn't carry enough weight for it to be effective downrange. This is 4.5 grams compared to 6.2 grams of the 10mm lead. So, you know, in terms of weight, it is a lot lighter. So, for me, it's an effective practice ammunition, but again, no good for hunting. When I say no good for hunting, you have to take everything into account. I'm looking to shoot things from 5 yards to 45 yards. At 5 yards, this is going to be devastating. At 45 yards, your kill zones come down to about that. So that's why it's ruled out for me. Right, moving on to 11mm steel. And when I mentioned 10mm lead, I was saying I like to switch between the two. And here's why. 11mm steel is around about the same weight as a 10mm lead. This comes in at 5.8 grams compared to 6.2 of the 10mm lead, so they're not far apart. This has a greater surface area than a 10mm lead, obviously. So when I'm shooting things like ducks and pheasants, I want a large surface area ball, still with speed, still with enough weight downrange to make a kill should not be in exactly the right place. But if I put this ball through the head of a pheasant or a duck, the surface area is that much larger that it's going to do enough damage on the way through that it's a clean kill. It's also still big enough and heavy enough that if I drop it low and shoot it in the neck, it's going to stop it. I've shot pheasants out at crazy ranges with 11mm steel just this season. The furthest one I actually paced it out, and this is no Billy Big bullshit, 67 yards. It dropped into just at the base of the neck of the pheasant. I may even put a picture up at the end of it actually, and stopped it clean. It was flipping around like they do when they're neck shot, but at 67 yards, an 11mm steel broke its neck. That was with 0.8 Stardy, a cut of 27-22. It really, you know, you can't complain at that. That's going to do everything you want it to do at 5-10 yards, at 50-60 yards if you can put the shot in the right place. So it still maintains that velocity downrange because it's small enough to have enough speed, heavy enough to carry its speed and not burn off quickly. A very, very good choice. Right, now from 11mm steel and now upwards, I'm going to say we're going downwards because again, I look at things kind of like an arc. You know, you're effective at close range with the smaller ammo. As you get up to the bigger ammo, you get a more effective range. But as the ammo starts to get even bigger, you start to tail off again. 11mm lead, close range, devastating. You know, if this could maintain its speed at 30-40 yards, you'd choose 11mm lead, you would. But it doesn't. It's just a bit heavy. The kind of weight of bands you'd need to maintain a velocity of this at 30-40 yards, it just would make it not enjoyable to shoot and not accurate. Very good choice for close range stuff. If you're shooting stuff 5 yards to 25 yards, very good. But yeah, not my choice because in a hunting situation you don't know what you're going to come across. It could be 45 yards. And at 45 yards, I don't want to be putting across a ball that's going to take 2 foot of drop at that kind of range, maybe more. So that's why close range, devastating, but it's ruled out purely because it's too heavy and the holdover necessary to be effective continually. is too much for me. Right, 12mm steel. This comes in pretty much exactly the same category as 11mm lead. Devastating at close range. At close range you can get fairly good speeds, but as soon as you start getting outside the 20-yard mark, it burns off its speed quickly due to its weight. So holdovers become big, and yeah, it's just not a choice for me because of that. If I was shooting stuff at close range all the time, over the 11mm lead, I'd probably choose 12mm steel, just because of the larger surface area. So you plant something in the head with that, the amount of damage it does as it passes through is obviously that much greater than 11mm lead. So things like, you know, ducks, pheasants, rabbits, head shooting it with something like that at close range, it's wipeout, it's game over. I mean, even body shooting something with that at close range, like a rabbit, it's game over. I mean, birds you should never body shoot really. I mean, if you're gonna, people go out with 16mm leads and massive tubes and body shoot stuff, it works, but you know, it's not really my way or my choice of doing things like that. So 12mm steel, good for close range, out, because it's I can't say it's not effective at long range, because it is, but because of the holdovers at long range, it's out for me. Right, 12mm lead, and this is about as far as we're going to go. Again, now we've gone even down further, much heavier, so obviously slower, so an even bigger holdover. Even at close range, I wouldn't use this because of its speed. You need very heavy bands, and we're talking flat bands with a short draw here, to get any kind of speed. Don't get me wrong, if you plant that at close range into the head of anything or neck of anything, it's dead without a doubt, but it's slow. I can't remember the chronograph numbers offhand, but it's really slow, for me anyway. And I like a fast ball, so that's why 12mm lead is out. Right, so we've covered them all from 8mm up to 12mm, and that's what I'd consider the most used ammunitions. 8mm steel, 8mm lead. I didn't have any 8mm leads, but that would have come in the same category as 8mm steel, up to 12mm lead. So basically, the smaller ammunition you use, the closer you should be shooting, and the smaller your killing area is. So an 8mm steel will probably kill out to 40 yards, but you're looking at a killing area of that. With an 11mm steel or a 10mm lead, you're looking at a killing area of the complete head and neck. Same with a rabbit, you know, you drop it into its ribs, its neck, its head, anywhere, it's going to stop it. So the further out you go, the less effective the smaller ammunition becomes. And also, which is why I say, the further out you go with larger ammunition, the less effective it becomes, because of the amount of holdover required. So we've got that arc, and right at the top of the arc, for me, is 10mm lead and 11mm steel. Enough speed, enough size, enough weight. It's got the perfect balance for everything. You can shoot stuff at short range, you can shoot stuff at long range, it's still going to be effective. There's no point having a setup that's set up for 10 to 20 yards if you're going to come across something at 40. If you're going out and you're only shooting stuff at 10 yards, 20 yards, then fine, you know, use whatever setup you want. Use your 8mm steels, 8mm leads, absolutely fine. But this is for my application, for what I'm using. I don't know what I'm going to come across, which is why I've chose what I've chose. You know, this is just my personal preference. Like I say, there's no right or wrong. This is the way I look at it. I've done a lot of testing with chronographs. People say chronographs aren't worth listening to. Well, that's rubbish. For you personally, to cater stuff to yourself, a chronograph is a very good tool. I've spent a lot of time on it. I've had a few surprises with it, and it can tell you a lot. So hopefully it's been informative. Like I say, just my personal view on it all. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe.